What if I told you that a simple penny from 1964, the kind you might find in an old jar or tucked away in a drawer, could be worth far more than 1 cent? And not just because it's old, but because of where it was made, how it was struck, and the surprising story behind it. Today, we're taking a close look at the 1964 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a small coin with a big history. The 1964 D Lincoln penny is a 1 cent coin produced by the United States Mint in Denver. The D Mint mark, located just below the date on the front of the coin, tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint. At first glance, it looks like any other Lincoln cent. On the front, you see the familiar profile of President Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. On the back, you'll find the classic wheat ears design, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America. But 1964 was not just another year. It was a turning point in American coinage. In the early 1960s, the United States was facing a coin shortage. Silver prices were rising, and people were hoarding coins, especially silver ones. While pennies were not made of silver, the growing demand for coins affected all denominations. The U.S. Mint responded by increasing production dramatically. In 1964 alone, the Denver Mint struck over 3 billion Lincoln pennies. That's an enormous number. Because so many were made, you might think the 1964 D penny can't possibly be valuable. And in most cases, you would be right. Most examples are still worth just a few cents, especially if they show heavy wear. But here's where the story gets interesting. The 1964 D penny was made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. That means it contains a significant amount of real copper, much more than modern pennies minted after 1982, which are mostly zinc with a thin copper coating. This gives the 1964 penny a solid, heavier feel. It weighs about 3.11 grams. Its rich, reddish color, especially in uncirculated condition, is one of the reasons collectors love it. Condition is everything when it comes to value. A 1964 D penny that has been in circulation for decades will likely show scratches, dull color, and worn details. But if you find one that looks almost brand new, with sharp lines in Lincoln's hair and bright original luster, that's a different story. High-grade examples, especially those graded Mint State 65 or higher by professional grading services, can sell for much more than face value. There are also special varieties and errors that make certain 1964 D pennies stand out. One of the most talked about is the repunched mint mark. In some cases, the D mint mark was punched into the coin more than once, slightly off from the original position. This can create a shadow-like effect around the letter. Collectors carefully examine the mint mark area under magnification, looking for these subtle differences. Another interesting error involves die cracks or double die features. A double die occurs when the design is impressed onto the die more than once, slightly misaligned. This can create visible doubling in the letters or numbers. While major double dies are rare for the 1964 D penny, minor varieties do exist and can attract strong interest from collectors. Now let's talk about real numbers. A typical circulated 1964 D penny might sell for 2 to 5 cents, but an uncirculated example with full red color, graded MS66, can sell for several $100s. In some auctions, top-condition examples have brought prices over $1,000, especially if they have exceptional eye appeal. Error coins with clear and dramatic features can also command impressive prices, depending on rarity and demand. So how do you know if your 1964 D penny is worth more than 1 cent? First, check the mint mark. It should be a small D below the date. Next, weigh the coin. It should be close to 3.11 grams. If it weighs significantly less, it could be damaged or altered. Look closely at the color. Coins are often described as red, red-brown, or brown. The more original red color remains, the more valuable the coin tends to be. Examine the details in Lincoln's hair and the wheat lines on the back. Sharp, Crisp lines usually mean less wear. If you suspect you have an error coin, use a magnifying glass to inspect the mint mark and lettering. If something looks unusual, it may be worth having the coin evaluated by a professional grading service. Counterfeiting is less common for this specific date because it is not extremely rare. However, altered coins do exist. Some people try to add a fake D mint mark to a 1964 Philadelphia penny, which originally had no mint mark. That's why it's important to look closely at the mint mark. On a genuine coin, the D should look clean and properly aligned, not glued on or oddly shaped. Here's a fun fact. The 1964 penny was the last year the U.S. Mint used the original 95% copper composition before major changes came to other coins. In 1965, the Mint removed silver from dimes and quarters. While pennies remained copper for several more years, 1964 represents the end of an era in American coinage history. It was also the final year before the Mint temporarily removed mint marks from coins between 1965 and 1967 in an effort to discourage collecting during the coin shortage. Collectors love the 1964 D. Lincoln penny, not because it is the rarest coin ever made, but because it represents a historic moment. It's a bridge between the old world of heavy copper coins and the modern era of cost-cutting and new materials. It's also accessible. Almost anyone can find one, and with patience and knowledge, you might discover a high-grade or error example hiding in plain sight. There's something powerful about holding a coin that was minted more than 60 years ago. It may have passed through thousands of hands. It may have bought a loaf of bread, a newspaper, or a gallon of gas when prices were very different from today. Yet it still carries the same design first introduced in 1909 to honor Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday. The next time you come across a 1964 D. Lincoln penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the condition. Study the mint mark. You might just be holding a small piece of American history with more value than you ever imagined. And that's the fascinating story of the 1964 D. Mint Mark Lincoln penny. A simple coin that proves even the most ordinary pocket change can carry an extraordinary story. So before you spend that next penny, ask yourself one question. What if it's more than just 1 cent? What if I told you that a single penny from 1969 could be worth more than a brand new car? And in some cases, even more than a house. Most people would never look twice at a 1969 penny. But one specific version of this coin has become one of the most talked about Lincoln cents in American coin history. Today, we're diving into the story of the 1969 D. Mint Mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks like any other 1-cent coin you might find in spare change. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the words 1 cent and United States of America on the back. But behind this ordinary appearance lies a fascinating story of history, mistakes, and serious collector interest. The 1969 Lincoln penny was struck during a time of major change in the United States. The country was in the middle of social transformation, the space race was heating up, and just months later, astronauts would walk on the moon. The Lincoln cent itself had already been in circulation for 60 years, first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday. By 1969, the design on the back was still the classic wheat ear style that had been replaced in 1959 by the Lincoln Memorial. So the 1969 penny features the Lincoln Memorial reverse, a design that was introduced in 1959 and continued until 2008. The D mint mark on this coin tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint, officially known as the United States Mint at Denver. In 1969, the Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of pennies for circulation. Most of them are very common today and worth only a few cents. They were made primarily of 95% copper and 5% zinc, the same bronze composition used for decades before rising copper prices changed the metal content in the 1980s. So if millions were made, why is there so much attention around the 1969 D penny? The answer lies in confusion and one very famous error coin. While the 1969 D penny itself is common, the year 1969 is associated with one of the rarest and most valuable Lincoln cents ever discovered, the 1969's double die obverse. That coin, struck at the San Francisco Mint, does not have a D mint mark. Instead, it has an S, and the doubling on the date and lettering is dramatic and clear. Only a small number were made, and they have sold for tens of thousands of dollars at auction. Because of that, many people mistakenly believe that all 1969 pennies are rare. Some even confuse the 1969 D penny with the much rarer 1969's double die. This confusion has caused countless 1969 D pennies to be carefully examined by hopeful collectors. Even though the standard 1969 D penny is not rare in circulated condition, there are still certain factors that can make it valuable. Condition is everything in coin collecting. A 1969 D penny that has never been used in circulation, with full original mint luster and no major marks, can be worth significantly more than face value. In high mint state grades, especially coins graded MS65 or higher by professional grading companies, values can range from several dollars to over $100 depending on quality. There are also error versions of the 1969 D penny. These include off-center strikes, die cracks, clipped planchets, and minor doubling that is not the same as the famous 1969's double die. Genuine mint errors are always in demand because they represent something unusual that happened during production. For example, a well-preserved off-center 1969 D penny can sell for $50 to $200 or more, depending on how dramatic the error is and how strong the details remain. At auctions, high-grade examples of the 1969 D penny have brought impressive prices for what is technically a common coin. Certified mint state examples graded at the very top of the scale have sold for hundreds of dollars. These are coins that look nearly perfect under magnification, with sharp details in Lincoln's hair and clear lines in the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. If you think you may have a valuable 1969 D penny, the first step is careful inspection. Look at the mint mark under the date. A genuine 1969 D penny will have a small d below the 1969. Make sure the mint mark matches the style used by the Denver Mint during that era. Be cautious of altered coins. Some individuals have tried to add or remove mint marks to create fake rarities. Under magnification, added mint marks often show glue residue, uneven surfaces, or incorrect placement. It is also important to understand that the dramatic doubling seen on the 1969's double die does not apply to the 1969 D penny. If you see slight doubling that looks flat or shelf-like, it is usually machine doubling, which does not add significant value. True double die coins show strong, separated doubling in the letters and numbers. One fun fact about the 1969 pennies is that when the rare 1969's double die was first discovered, the Secret Service initially believed they were counterfeit. Some early examples were even confiscated before experts confirmed they were genuine mint errors. That story added even more mystery to all 1969 pennies, including those from Denver. Collectors today love the 1969 D penny not because it is rare in every case, but because it represents a year filled with coin-collecting legends. It is a reminder that even in years when millions of coins were produced, something extraordinary can happen. For many hobbyists, searching through rolls of 1969 pennies is part of the excitement. The hope of finding a high-grade example or an unusual error keeps the hunt alive. Another reason collectors appreciate this coin is its connection to a powerful era in American history. The late 1960s were unforgettable. Holding a 1969 penny means holding a small piece of that time, a year when history was unfolding in dramatic ways. Coins are more than money. They are tiny time capsules. So is the 1969 D mint mark Lincoln penny worth thousands of dollars? In most cases, no. But can it still be valuable? Absolutely, especially in exceptional condition or with a genuine mint error. And perhaps even more importantly, it serves as a gateway coin. It encourages people to look closer at their change, to learn about mint marks, and to understand how small details can make a huge difference in value. The next time you see a 1969 D penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the condition. Study the details. Because in the world of coin collecting, knowledge is what turns an ordinary cent into something far more meaningful. And who knows? The next coin you examine might just have a story that surprises you. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1975, the kind many people have tossed into jars or drawers for decades, could be worth far more than 1 cent? And what if the small letter D on that coin is the key detail that could make all the difference? Today, we're talking about the 1975 D mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance but holds a fascinating story. This is a 1 cent coin featuring President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. It was struck at the Denver Mint, which is why you'll see a small D just below the date on the front of the coin. To understand this penny, we have to go back to 1975. The United States was still feeling the effects of high inflation. Prices were rising, and even small coins like pennies were becoming more expensive to produce. The design used in 1975 was part of a long-running series that began in 1959, replacing the earlier wheat design. The obverse, or front, was designed by Victor David Brenner, whose initials VDB appear in tiny letters on the coin. The reverse, showing the Lincoln Memorial, was created by Frank Gasparro. This design would remain in use until 2008. In 1975, the Denver Mint produced more than 4 billion Lincoln cents. That's an enormous number. Because of this high mintage, most 1975 D pennies are very common. They were made for everyday use, meant to pass from hand to hand in grocery stores, gas stations, and vending machines across America. Nothing about their purpose suggested rarity or future value. But coins are not just about numbers. They are about condition, details, and sometimes mistakes. The 1975 D Lincoln penny was made primarily of copper, specifically 95% copper and 5% zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams. If you hold one, you'll notice its familiar reddish-brown color, although over time many have darkened or turned brown due to circulation. On the front, you'll see Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1975 to the right, along with the small D mint mark. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly, and if you look closely, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. While billions were made, not all coins are equal. Most 1975 D pennies in circulated condition are worth only a few cents today. But coins in uncirculated condition, especially those graded at the highest levels by professional grading services, can be worth much more. A brilliant red example that has never been in circulation and has sharp details can sell for dozens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on its grade. One of the biggest factors in value is condition. Collectors look for coins with full luster, strong strikes, and minimal marks. Because pennies were used heavily in daily transactions, finding one from 1975 D in perfect shape is not easy. Many were scratched, worn down, or exposed to moisture over the years. There are also error coins that make this year more exciting. While there is no famous major variety like a double die for the 1975 D as dramatic as some other years, minor errors do exist. Some collectors have found off-center strikes, where the design is not perfectly aligned on the blank. Others have discovered coins with die cracks, which look like raised lines caused by stress in the metal dies. These error coins can command higher prices, especially if the mistake is dramatic and clearly visible. In auction records, most 1975 pennies sell for modest amounts. A typical circulated example might sell for 1 to 5 cents. An uncirculated red coin graded around MS65 could bring anywhere from $10 to $20. However, the highest graded examples, especially those graded MS67 read by top grading services, have sold for several $100s. The value depends heavily on demand and the coin's eye appeal at the time of sale. It's important to separate reality from rumors. You may see claims online that every 1975 penny is worth thousands of dollars. That is simply not true. The majority are common, but the excitement comes from the possibility that you might find a top-grade example or a striking error coin hiding in your collection. So how can you tell if your 1975 penny is valuable? Start by checking the mint mark. Make sure the small d is clearly part of the coin and not altered. Counterfeiters sometimes try to add mint marks to coins to increase their value, but in this case, since Denver produced so many, adding a D would not make sense. Instead, focus on condition. Look for sharp details in Lincoln's hair and the lines of the memorial. Check the color. A bright red coin is generally more desirable than a brown one. Use a small scale to confirm the weight is around 3.11 grams. If something seems unusual, such as a dramatic misalignment or doubling, consider having it evaluated by a professional. One interesting fact about the 1975 Lincoln Cent series is that while the Denver Mint struck billions with the D mint mark, there are no proof coins with a D from that year. Proof coins in 1975 were produced at the San Francisco Mint and carry an S mint mark. That means any mirror-like proof coin you see with a 1975 date will not have a D. Another surprising detail is how the cost of copper has changed over time. The copper inside a 1975 penny is actually worth more than 1 cent based on metal value alone. However, it is illegal to melt down pennies for their metal content. This makes the coin a small time capsule of a period when the United States still used mostly copper in its lowest denomination coin. Collectors love the 1975 Lincoln penny because it represents an era of American history when everyday currency was changing behind the scenes. It may not be rare in the traditional sense, but in top condition, it becomes a challenge coin. Finding a flawless example from a year with billions struck is harder than it sounds. That challenge keeps collectors searching through rolls, bank boxes, and old collections. For many people, the real value of the 1975 penny is not just in dollars. It's in the thrill of the hunt. It's in the idea that something so small and common might hold a hidden story or a surprising premium. It reminds us that even the most ordinary objects can carry history in their metal. So the next time you come across a 1975 Lincoln penny, don't dismiss it as just another cent. Take a closer look. Check the condition. Look for errors. Imagine where it has traveled over the past 50 years. Because while most are worth only a few cents, the right one in the right condition could be worth far more than you expect. And that's the magic of coin collecting. Sometimes, the smallest coins hold the biggest surprises. What if the next penny you pick up is worth far more than 1 cent? Not a rare gold coin, not a silver dollar, but a simple 1978 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. Millions were made, most are still out there, and yet a small number of them can be worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars. The question is, how do you know if yours is one of them? The 1978 no mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin featuring President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. At first glance, it looks like any other copper penny you might find in pocket change. But like many ordinary coins, its real story lies beneath the surface. The year 1978 was part of a busy era for the United States Mint. America was moving forward after a challenging economic decade, and cash transactions were still a major part of everyday life. The Lincoln cent, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, had already become one of the most recognized coins in the country. By 1978, the design created by Victor David Brenner had been in use for nearly 70 years on the front, while the Lincoln Memorial Reverse, introduced in 1959, marked 150 years since Lincoln's birth. When you see a 1978 penny without a mint mark, it means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. During that time, coins from Philadelphia did not carry a mint mark. That often confuses new collectors who think a missing mint mark means an error. In reality, for 1978, no mint mark is completely normal for Philadelphia coins. In 1978, more than 5 billion Lincoln cents were produced in Philadelphia alone. That is a massive number. With such a high mintage, you might assume the coin has no special value. And for most examples in worn condition, that is true. Many are still worth only 1 cent, but condition and errors can change everything. The 1978 penny is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, weighing about 3.11 grams. This was before the major composition change in 1982, when the mint switched to mostly zinc with a thin copper coating. That means the 1978 penny still has that heavier, solid copper feel. For collectors, that adds historical appeal, as it represents the final years of traditional bronze cents. On the front, you will see Lincoln's profile facing right, with the word Liberty to his left and the date 1978 to his right. Above his head is the national motto, "In God We Trust." On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall in the center, with United States of America and E pluribus unum above, and 1 cent below. So if billions were made, where does the value come from? First, condition is everything. A 1978 penny that has never been circulated, meaning it shows no wear and still has its original mint luster, can be worth far more than face value. In uncirculated grades, especially those graded mint state 65 or higher by professional grading services, prices can climb significantly. The highest grade examples, with sharp details and rich red color, have sold for hundreds of dollars at auction. For example, high-grade red 1978 no-mint mark pennies certified in top condition have sold for over $1,000 in rare cases. These are coins that look almost exactly as they did the day they left the mint. The bright red copper color is especially desirable. Over time, copper darkens and turns brown. A fully red coin from 1978 is much harder to find than you might expect. Then there are errors. Error coins are where the real excitement begins. Some 1978 pennies were struck with doubled dies, meaning certain letters or numbers appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment in the die during production. While not extremely common, these varieties are sought after. A strong doubled die can push a coin's value far beyond normal levels. There are also off-center strikes, where part of the design is missing because the blank planchet was not properly aligned during striking. If the date is still visible and a significant portion of the design is off-center, collectors often pay a premium. Other possible errors include clipped planchets, where a piece of the coin is missing due to a cutting mistake at the mint. Real auction records show that dramatic error examples of the 1978 Lincoln cent have sold for hundreds of dollars, depending on the type and severity of the error. Even more modest errors can bring in solid 2-digit prices. But how do you know if your 1978 no-mint mark penny is valuable? Start by checking the condition. Look closely at Lincoln's cheek and jawline. If you see flatness and wear, the coin has been circulated. If the details are sharp and the surface still shines, you may have an uncirculated piece. Next, check the color. Collectors classify copper coins as red, red-brown, or brown. Red coins are the most valuable. Then inspect the coin under good lighting or a magnifying glass. Look at the date and the word Liberty for any signs of doubling. If you suspect an error, compare your coin with verified examples online or consider having it evaluated by a professional grading service. Be cautious of altered coins. Some people attempt to create fake errors by damaging coins or using tools to alter the surface. Genuine mint errors usually have smooth, natural-looking metal flow and no signs of tampering. If something looks scratched, filed, or forced, it may not be authentic. One surprising fact about the 1978 penny is that even though billions were made, finding one in perfect condition today is much harder than you might think. Most were heavily used in everyday transactions. They passed through vending machines, cash registers, and countless pockets. Very few were carefully saved in pristine condition. Another interesting detail is that 1978 marked one of the final years before major changes in coin production technology and materials. Within just a few years, rising copper prices would force the mint to change the composition of the cent. That makes the 1978 penny part of the closing chapter of the classic bronze era. Collectors today love the 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny not because it is extremely rare, but because it represents opportunity. It is a coin you can still find in circulation, coin rolls, or old jars at home. The idea that something so common could hold hidden value keeps the hunt exciting. For many collectors, the thrill is not just about money. It is about discovery. It is about examining a simple coin and realizing it carries decades of history in your hand. That small copper disc has traveled through time, passing from one American to another since the late 1970s. And here is the most important takeaway. Most 1978 no-mint mark pennies are worth only face value. But the rare high-grade examples and genuine mint errors prove that even the most ordinary coins deserve a second look. So the next time you receive change or open an old coin jar, pause before you toss that penny aside. Check the date. Look for that missing mint mark, which in this case means Philadelphia. Study the color, the shine, the tiny details. Because sometimes, hidden among billions, there is one coin that stands out. And when you realize that a simple 1978 penny could be worth far more than 1 cent, you start to see every coin differently. The real question is not whether these valuable examples exist. The real question is whether one of them is already in your pocket, waiting to be discovered. What if the next time you reach into your pocket, you're holding a penny that could be worth far more than 1 cent? Most people overlook modern coins, especially something as common as a 1989 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. But what if I told you that this ordinary-looking coin has a story, and in certain conditions, it can surprise collectors in a big way? The 1989 no mint mark Lincoln penny is a coin many Americans have seen without even realizing it. At first glance, it looks like any other penny from the late 1980s. It features the familiar portrait of President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But the detail that often confuses people is the missing mint mark. Some assume that no mint mark means a mistake. In this case, it doesn't. It simply means the coin was made at the Philadelphia Mint, which at the time did not place a mint mark on pennies. To understand this coin better, we need to step back to 1989. The United States was approaching the end of the 20th century. The economy was changing, technology was advancing, and billions of coins were being produced each year for everyday transactions. The Lincoln cent had already been in circulation since 1909, first introduced to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 1989, the design featuring Lincoln's profile by Victor David Brenner had been a familiar sight for 80 years. The reverse of the coin in 1989 still displayed the Lincoln Memorial, a design created by Frank Gasparro in 1959. If you look closely at the back, you can actually see a tiny image of the Lincoln statue inside the memorial. It's one of the few U.S. coins where the same person appears on both sides. Now let's talk about the metal. By 1989, pennies were no longer made mostly of copper. In 1982, the U.S. Mint switched to a composition of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper plating. This was done because copper had become too expensive. The 1989 penny weighs about 2.5 grams, much lighter than the older solid copper cents. This change is important because collectors often check weight to confirm authenticity. Since hundreds of millions of 1989 pennies were made in Philadelphia, you might wonder how any could be valuable. The answer lies in condition and errors. In average circulated condition, a 1989 no-mint mark penny is worth exactly 1 cent. Even in uncirculated condition, most examples are worth only a few cents to a couple of dollars. However, there are exceptions. High-grade coins that have never been used and show full red color can sell for much more. Professional grading services use a scale from 1 to 70. A coin graded MS65 or higher, meaning it is in near-perfect mint state, can bring strong interest from collectors. In top grades like MS67, examples have sold for over $100 at auction. That's a huge jump from 1 cent. Even more exciting are error coins. In 1989, some pennies were struck with mistakes during the minting process. These include double die errors, where parts of the design appear doubled, and off-center strikes, where the coin design is not properly aligned. A genuine 1989 double die obverse penny can sell for several $100s, depending on how strong the doubling is and the condition of the coin. There are also coins with broad strikes, clipped planchets, or die cracks. Each type of error has its own appeal. Collectors love errors because they are unique. No two are exactly alike. That rarity drives demand. Real auction results show this clearly. Certified high-grade 1989 pennies with exceptional red surfaces have sold in the range of $100 to $300. Dramatic error examples have reached even higher prices. While these are not everyday finds, they prove that even a modern penny can carry surprising value. If you think you might have a valuable 1989 penny, how do you check it? First, look at the front under the date. If there is no mint mark, that means it was made in Philadelphia. That is normal. Next, examine the coin closely under good lighting. Look for unusual doubling in the letters of Liberty or the date. Check whether the design is centered. Weigh the coin if you have a precise scale. It should be close to 2.5 grams. A significant difference could mean damage or, in rare cases, a wrong planchet error. Be cautious of altered coins. Some people try to create fake errors by damaging coins or using tools to change details. Real mint errors happen during production and usually show smooth, natural-looking distortions. If you believe you have something special, consider sending it to a professional grading company for authentication. Here's a surprising detail. Even though the 1989 penny is common, billions of them have already disappeared from circulation. Pennies are often lost, thrown away, or stored in jars and forgotten. Over time, high-quality examples become harder to find. That slow disappearance makes pristine coins more desirable. Another interesting fact is that the Lincoln Memorial reverse would soon be replaced. In 2009, to celebrate Lincoln's 200th birthday, the U.S. Mint introduced special reverse designs. In 2010, the Union Shield design took over permanently. That means the 1989 penny belongs to the long-running Memorial era, which lasted 50 years from 1959 to 2008. Collectors today appreciate the 1989 no-mint mark penny as part of complete daytime mint collections. Many hobbyists build albums covering every year of Lincoln cents. Even though this coin is not rare in the traditional sense, finding one in flawless condition straight from circulation is surprisingly difficult. There is also something powerful about the idea that value can hide in plain sight. A simple coin, passed from hand to hand, can carry history, design artistry, and sometimes unexpected worth. The 1989 no-mint mark Lincoln penny reminds us that not all treasures are ancient or made of gold. Some are small, copper-colored pieces of everyday life. So the next time you see a 1989 penny, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. Check the condition. Search for errors. You may only find a single cent. Or you might discover a small piece of American minting history that collectors are willing to pay far more for. And that's the beauty of coin collecting. Every coin has a story. Every year has its secrets. And sometimes, the most ordinary penny can make you look twice and wonder what else might be hiding in your spare change. What if I told you that a single penny from 1992 could be worth thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars? Not a gold coin, not a rare silver dollar, just a simple 1-cent piece that may be sitting in a jar, a drawer, or even your pocket right now. The 1992 D. Lincoln penny is one of those coins that proves small change can hold big surprises. The 1992 D. Lincoln penny was struck at the Denver Mint, which is why you see the small D mint mark just below the date on the front of the coin. At first glance, it looks like any other Lincoln cent from the early 1990s. It features the familiar portrait of President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Millions were made. In fact, more than 4 billion 1992 D pennies were produced. So how could something made in the billions become rare? To understand that, we need to step back for a moment. The Lincoln cent has been part of American life since 1909. It was introduced to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. The front of the coin was designed by Victor David Brenner, and his portrait of Lincoln has remained on the penny for more than a century. In 1959, the back of the coin changed to show the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., replacing the earlier wheat design. By 1992, that memorial design had already been in use for over 30 years. In 1992, the United States Mint was preparing for a design change that would happen the following year. In 1993, a slight modification was made to the reverse lettering, especially the spacing between the words America and of. On most 1992 pennies, there is a noticeable gap between the A in America and the F in OF. But on a very small number of 1992 coins, something unusual happened. A few 1992 pennies were struck using a reverse die that had the new, tighter spacing intended for 1993. This created what collectors now call the close AM variety. On these rare coins, the letters A and M in America are very close together, almost touching. More importantly, the A in America and the F in of are much closer than they should be for a 1992 coin. This small difference in spacing turned an ordinary penny into one of the most talked about modern coin varieties. While most 1992 D pennies are only worth 1 cent, the rare 1992 D close AM variety can be worth thousands of dollars in the right condition. So what makes it so valuable? It comes down to rarity and demand. Only a handful of confirmed 1992 D close AM pennies have been found. Experts believe that just a small number of reverse dies with the 1993 design were accidentally used in 1992 at the Denver Mint. Because the error was not noticed at the time, the coins were released into circulation. Most were likely spent and worn down over the years. That means surviving examples are extremely hard to find. When collectors realized the difference, the search began. Coin roll hunters started checking every 1992 penny they could find. Dealers carefully examined old inventory. But even after decades, only a few examples have surfaced. In terms of real value, the numbers are impressive. A genuine 1992 D close AM penny in circulated condition can sell for several $1,000s. In higher grades, the value jumps dramatically. One well-preserved example graded by a major coin grading service has sold for over $20,000 at auction. That is a remarkable return for a coin that originally cost just 1 cent. But before you get too excited, it is important to know how to identify the real thing. First, check the date. It must read 1992, and there must be a small D mint mark below the date, showing it was made in Denver. Next, turn the coin over and look closely at the word America. On the rare close AM variety, the A and M are almost touching, and the space between America and of is much tighter than normal. It helps to compare your coin to a regular 1992 penny. On a standard coin, there is a clear gap between the A and M in America, and the A and F are more widely spaced. A magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe makes it easier to see the difference. You should also be careful of altered coins. Some people try to modify regular pennies to make the letters look closer together. Others may attempt to reshape the date or mint mark. If you believe you have found a 1992 D-Close AM penny, the safest step is to have it authenticated by a professional coin grading service. They can confirm whether it is genuine and assign it a grade that reflects its condition. There are a few other interesting details about the 1992 D penny. By this time, pennies were no longer made mostly of copper. Since 1982, the composition changed to a zinc core with a thin copper coating. That means your 1992 D penny is made of 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. Even though it looks like solid copper, it is actually mostly zinc inside. Another surprising fact is that the close AM variety was discovered years after the coins were minted. It was not something announced by the mint. Instead, sharp-eyed collectors noticed the unusual spacing while studying coins under magnification. This shows how important attention to detail can be in the world of coin collecting. Collectors love the 1992 D-Close AM penny because it combines modern history with true scarcity. Many rare coins come from the 1800s or early 1900s. Finding one of those often requires spending a lot of money. But the 1992 D-Close AM could still be hiding in circulation, in old jars, or in bank rolls. That sense of possibility makes it exciting. It also represents a transition moment in minting history. The early 1990s were a time of design adjustments and production changes at the United States Mint. The accidental use of the wrong reverse die created a variety that few people noticed at first. Today, it stands as one of the key modern Lincoln cent rarities. Even if you do not find the rare close AM version, the 1992 D penny is still a piece of American history. It carries the image of Abraham Lincoln, one of the most respected presidents in the nation's past. It reflects the era of the early 1990s, a time before smartphones and online banking, when cash was still king and pennies were used every day. So the next time you see a 1992 D Lincoln penny, do not dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look at the back. Study the spacing of the letters. That tiny detail could mean the difference between 1 cent and a life-changing discovery. And that is the magic of coin collecting. Sometimes the greatest treasures are not buried underground or locked in a vault. Sometimes they are hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look just a little closer. What if I told you that a simple penny from 1997 could be worth far more than 1 cent? Most people would never look twice at it. It might be sitting in a jar, hidden in a drawer, or mixed in your pocket change right now. But under the right conditions, a 1997 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny can surprise you in ways most people never expect. The 1997 D Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series first introduced in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln. By 1997, the design had already been in circulation for nearly 9 decades. On the front, you see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, originally designed by Victor David Brenner. On the back, you see the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had been used since 1959. The small letter D, just below the date, tells you this coin was minted in Denver at the United States Mint facility in Denver, Colorado. In 1997, the United States was in a period of economic growth. The internet was expanding, and everyday life was changing quickly. But through all that change, the Lincoln penny remained a constant. Billions of pennies were produced that year. In fact, the Denver Mint struck over 4 billion 1997 D pennies. That number might make you think this coin could never be rare. And for most examples, that is true. In average circulated condition, a 1997 D penny is usually worth just 1 cent. But here is where the story gets interesting. Even when a coin is produced in huge numbers, certain versions can become highly collectible. Condition is everything. Most 1997 D pennies were used in daily transactions. They were dropped, scratched, and worn down over time. Finding one in perfect, untouched condition is much harder than you might think. A 1997 D penny in uncirculated condition, especially one graded at the very top of the scale, can sell for significantly more than face value. Professional grading companies use a scale from 1 to 70. A coin graded MS67 or higher is considered extremely well preserved. At that level, even a modern penny can command strong prices. Some high-grade examples of the 1997 D penny have sold for over $100, and in rare top population grades, even more. For a coin that started as 1 cent, that is an impressive jump. The coin itself is made mostly of zinc, with a thin copper coating. Since 1982, Lincoln cents have used this copper-plated zinc composition. That means the 1997 D penny is lightweight compared to older solid copper cents. It weighs about 2.5 grams. The front shows Lincoln facing right, with the word Liberty to the left and the date and mint marked to the right. Above his head, you see the national motto, "In God We Trust." On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly, and if you look closely, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. Now let's talk about errors, because this is where collectors get truly excited. While most 1997 D pennies are common, certain error coins from that year are highly collectible. Some examples show off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned. Others may have die cracks, which look like raised lines across the surface. There are also cases of double die errors, where parts of the design appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. One of the most talked about varieties from the late 1990s is the 1997 double die obverse. While not extremely dramatic compared to famous double dies from earlier decades, it can still bring a premium when clearly visible and professionally authenticated. Collectors carefully examine the lettering in Liberty and the date for signs of doubling. Auction results show the power of condition and rarity. A typical circulated 1997 D penny might sell in bulk for face value, but an MS68 graded example has sold for several $100s in past auctions. The difference between a 1 cent coin and a several $100 coin often comes down to tiny details invisible to the untrained eye. So how can you tell if your 1997 D penny is special? First, check the mint mark. It should be a small D under the date. Make sure it looks natural and not altered. Some people in the past have tried to add or remove mint marks on other coins to increase value. But on a 1997 D, the mint mark should be clean, sharp, and consistent with the rest of the design. Next, examine the condition. Look at Lincoln's cheek and jawline. These are high points on the coin and usually show wear first. If those areas are smooth or dull, the coin has likely been circulated. A valuable uncirculated coin will have full original luster, meaning it reflects light evenly across the surface. There should be no signs of wear, only minor contact marks from storage. If you suspect an error, use a magnifying glass. Look closely at the letters and numbers. True doubling will appear as a clear separation, not just a shadow. And if you believe you have something unusual, the safest way to confirm it is through a professional coin grading service. Authentication protects both buyers and sellers. Here is a fun detail many people miss. In 1997, the Lincoln Memorial design was nearing the end of its long run. Just 12 years later, in 2009, the reverse design would change to celebrate Lincoln's bicentennial. That makes the 1997 penny part of the final chapter of the Memorial Reverse era, a design that lasted 50 years. Another surprising fact is how many collectors focus on building complete Daytan mint sets. Even common coins like the 1997 are essential pieces in those collections. A serious collector aiming for high-grade sets must find the best possible example from each mint and year. That constant demand keeps interest alive, even for modern issues. Collectors love the 1997 Lincoln penny not because it is rare in general, but because it represents possibility. It reminds us that value is not always obvious. Sometimes, it hides in plain sight. A simple coin, produced by the billions, can still hold excitement when preserved in near-perfect condition or struck with a rare error. The beauty of coin collecting is that it turns everyday objects into pieces of history. That penny in your pocket may have traveled across states, passed through countless hands, or sat untouched in a roll for decades. Each one carries a quiet story. So the next time you receive change, take a closer look. Check the date. Look for that small D, tilt the coin under the light and study its surface. You may not find a $100 example right away, but the thrill of the search is part of the journey. Because sometimes, the most ordinary coin can hold an extraordinary surprise. And the 1997 Mint Mark Lincoln penny is proof that even a single cent can spark curiosity, history, and the possibility of hidden value waiting to be discovered. What if the small copper-colored penny sitting in your pocket right now could be worth far more than 1 cent? Most people overlook modern pennies, especially ones from the 2000s. But the 2006 Mint Mark Lincoln penny has a story that surprises many collectors. And in certain conditions, it can be worth much more than face value. The 2006 Lincoln penny is a 1 cent coin struck at the Denver Mint. The small D mint mark, located just below the date on the front of the coin, tells you it was made in Denver. At first glance, it looks like any other modern penny. It features the familiar portrait of President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But as simple as it appears, there is more going on beneath the surface. To understand this coin, we need to go back to its origin. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln. The original design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, and his portrait of Lincoln remains on the front of the coin to this day. In 2006, nearly a century after its introduction, the Lincoln penny was still one of the most widely produced coins in America. That year, billions of pennies were struck to keep up with everyday commerce. In 2006, the Denver Mint produced over 2.8 billion Lincoln cents. That number may sound enormous, and it is. Because of such high production, most 2006 pennies are common. You can still find them in circulation today. However, not all of them are equal. Condition, quality, and certain mint errors can turn an ordinary penny into a collectible piece. The 2006 Lincoln penny is made from a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper. Since 1982, most Lincoln cents have been made this way. The coin weighs 2.5 grams and has a smooth edge. On the front, you see Lincoln's profile facing right, along with the word Liberty to his left and the date and mint marked to his right. Above his head is the motto "In God We Trust." On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, and if you look very closely, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. While billions were made, collectors pay special attention to coins in uncirculated condition. An uncirculated 2006 penny that has never been used in everyday transactions can have bright red color and sharp details. These are often graded by professional services like PCGS or NGC. In top grades such as M, S67 or higher, these coins become surprisingly scarce. For example, while a worn 2006 penny is worth only 1 cent, a high-grade example in near-perfect condition can sell for $20, $50, or even over $100 depending on demand and certification. The value comes from rarity in condition, not rarity in mintage. But condition is not the only factor. Mint errors also create excitement. Some 2006 pennies have been discovered with errors such as off-center strikes, double dies, die cracks, or clip planchets. A double die error occurs when the design appears slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. These errors are not common, and collectors are always searching for them. An off-center strike, where part of the design is missing because the coin was not properly aligned when struck, can be worth anywhere from $10 to several $100 depending on how dramatic the error is. Even a strong die crack, which appears as a raised line on the coin, can increase its value to a specialist collector. There have been online auction sales where dramatic 2006 error pennies sold for $150, $300, and sometimes more. While these are not everyday finds, they show that modern coins can still carry real value. So how can you tell if you have a valuable 2006 penny? First, check the mint mark. Make sure the small d is clearly visible under the date. Next, examine the condition. Look for sharp details in Lincoln's hair and the Lincoln Memorial. If the coin still has its original red shine and no scratches or wear, it may be worth setting aside. Then inspect the coin closely for errors. Use a magnifying glass if possible. Look at the letters in Liberty and in God We Trust. Do any of them appear doubled? Is the coin perfectly centered? Are there unusual cracks or raised lines? If something looks unusual, it may be worth having the coin examined by a professional grading service. It is also important to be cautious about altered coins. Some people try to add fake mint marks or create artificial errors. A genuine 2006 penny will have a mint mark that matches the style and position used by the Denver Mint. If the mint mark looks crooked, too large, or scratched into the surface, it could be fake. Always compare with known authentic examples. One interesting fact about the 2006 Lincoln penny is that it was struck during a time when the cost of producing pennies was rising sharply. The price of metals increased in the mid-2000s, and at times it cost more than 1 cent to make a penny. This sparked debates about whether the United States should stop producing the coin altogether. Yet the penny survived, and collectors continued to save high-quality examples. Another surprising detail is how many collectors ignore modern coins, assuming they hold no value. Because of that mindset, high-grade examples from years like 2006 are often not preserved carefully. Over time, truly flawless pieces become harder to find, especially with full red color and no contact marks. Collectors today appreciate the 2006 Lincoln penny as part of a long-running American tradition. It represents everyday commerce, American history, and the continued legacy of Abraham Lincoln on U.S. currency. For some, it is about completing a full daytime mint collection of Lincoln cents. For others, it is about the thrill of finding an error coin in pocket change. The beauty of this coin is that it reminds us value is not always obvious. A coin made in the billions can still contain hidden treasures. It all depends on condition, detail, and a careful eye. So the next time you receive change at a store, pause for a moment before dropping those pennies into a jar. Take a closer look at the date. Look for that small d, examine the surface under good light. Because sometimes, even a simple 2006 Lincoln penny can carry a story far greater than 1 cent. And if you happen to find one in extraordinary condition or with a striking mint error, you might discover that the smallest coin in your pocket holds the biggest surprise of all.